All right.
Spamming refresh on your channel
Boom.
to get the link.
Action. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is we're gonna do an overview of the Wehrmacht faction. Luckily, once again, it's a great honor to introduce Brian here. Brian's here. As you guys know, this is the long version of faction reviews. We compare first edition, which we see here, compared to second edition. So, and this is why it's a little longer than normal. But for the veteran backers, it's really nice for them to see the differences if they haven't paid attention to anything. And more importantly, this long version also kind of help explain the changes and why they were made. So, and also for second edition backers, it'll actually help you understand more of how the complexities of the factions were designed. But before we get to that, I do want to introduce one of the legends behind the one that spearheaded the whole entire second edition, the man I've had the most arguments with in the last couple of months about this game alone, complainings. He probably heard more complaints from me than anybody here, and that is the myth, the man, the legend. Introduce yourself, Brian.
I don't know about legend, but I am a myth in that I'm on the team. But in any case, I made it on the team. Lead designer for second edition. I'm Brian Cromry. And welcome, folks, for joining us here. We have, again, I recommend starting with the British one on Slava's channel here, the British overview, then the US, and now the Wehrmacht. We will hopefully be able to finish the last two before the Kickstarter campaign ends. So if you haven't followed our Kickstarter campaign, Company of Heroes at Kickstarter, we still have about a week to go.
Yeah,
So
and
with that said, you ready to go?
yeah, and you know what? If you're just joining now, you're actually some of the lucky few people because they just announced the all-in for veteran back. Is it for veteran backers and for non-veteran backers?
Uh,
It was just
so
announced today, wasn't it? You want to break that down
yeah,
just really
yeah,
lightly?
sure. Yeah, for anyone who's catching it within the last week here, we actually had a basically publisher town hall, I guess is the way to phrase it, just a few hours ago. That was over on my channel. You could probably just type in Company of Heroes, maybe Brian, maybe I'm not sure. It's on the my Bad Crow Games
Hmm.
channel, but it's under Brian Cromry. So that covered the all-in new backer bundle. So we were able to actually get 6 factions in it, and that's gonna all come in the work rate. So if that interests you, yeah, go check out that for all the details. And then we have the new, basically all gameplay. We call it all faction gameplay. And that's kind of just all 5 factions, all the stuff for like all the commanders, all the expansions that include all that, commanders in the units. And then you can, if you want to add on to that, you certainly can do so if you want. Otherwise, that's, if you're just looking at all the core stuff for the infinite replayability angle, that's there for you. And then we were listening to our veteran backers, and they just really wanted a little bit lower pledge at that elite level. So they could kind of, some of them didn't want solo, or some of them didn't want legacy map pack. So we just wanted to offer one kind of reduced price option for them,
Hmm.
which wasn't really cost effective for us, but just kind of listening to our backers and just giving them the option so they don't have to grab everything. They can kind of just grab more of what they want, which has kind of been the theme of this whole Kickstarter in general, is just really appreciating the backers, because really wouldn't be here without them. So
Yeah,
thank you, backers.
and I do want to clear up when Brian says six factions, he doesn't mean six different factions.
Hmm.
I mean, I know
Yeah,
Company
yeah.
Hero was just announced as North American,
Yeah,
but
that is a good thing to clarify. It is just so that you can do. A lot of people are going to pick. You don't have to pick another access, but you can pick up a second Wehrmacht or OKW if you want to do 3v3. It was just to the point where, given at this price and how much you were getting, I really pushed Chris to say, look, can we get, even if we have to go slightly higher, can we get these backers a whole nother faction in there, because a lot of them are going to want that 3v3, thanks to, like, Slava showing it off. It's just so much fun at that player count, and we just really want to be able to offer it. So we have kind of that 5 faction, and then now we have that 6 faction. So that's kind of what we were looking for. So again, if you want all the details, you can head over to my channel over there, and We basically just finished it a couple hours ago. And then yeah, I mean you could just check the Kickstarter campaign that kind of gives you everything. There was one little error where the legacy map pack is in that all-in bundle. It is in the FAQ. Um, you know, if we don't have mistakes, it's not us, right? So
Yeah. So
so that's that.
yeah, and that's okay. So if you're joining in to look at this faction reviews and you have nothing, no idea about Company Heroes, if you joined last week, this wasn't even an option. Now it's there. It's like once and done. One button click and everything's good to go. But we are here to review the Wehrmacht. Probably from the Access side, this is my most favorite faction, and we'll talk about it as we go on later on. I think they have some of the best infantry units. Well, one of the best infantry unit in the game, but that's we'll come to there
Which
when we
one?
get there.
You love them all, I
I
thought.
like them
So
a lot, yeah, but the one it gets underplayed, and if you actually watch the 2v2 we did, you'll see it come out towards the end, but let's not spoil it. So once again, we're going to compare the first edition, second edition. I'm just going to go through it. We can bring you guys up to speed for the veteran backers, non-veteran backers, and just talk about the differences. We'll start off first building on here on the screen. This first edition version right here that you're seeing. And on the TTS with the green mouse, this is second edition. We'll go with the Grenadiers. This is the first change they made to the game was Grenadiers, same thing, 4 health, 2 range. Nothing really changed for attack. Still has a wrench to heal. Still same cost. Now, the one minor change, which I do like, is the munition decreased by 1 for the HE shot. I think it's fair. Bring it up. The more HE is not a very viable strategy to win a game. You know what I mean? Because there's a little randomness to it. So reducing by 1 just makes it more seen on the board. But the biggest change was for the 2 victory experience points, getting rid of its sight and range and adding camouflage instead. And this, when I mean this is a huge change, this is a humongous change for a tier 1 unit coming out the board, being able to have camouflage round 3. Huge.
yeah.
And I guess the question is, why remove the sight and range, which was also a really good option? I mean, for the Grenadiers, the
Yep.
one sight, one range was a great option. With the HE, you could fight a lot of factions with that. Why remove
Yep.
sight and range for camouflage? What was the thought behind
So,
that?
well, yeah, we could just unpack that by first starting with the sight and range. I think that's a good place to start there. The sight and range was really it was just too similar to the British infantry section. So the British infantry section can't get a damage upgrade, so it didn't have like an AI, or I should say, can't get the damage upgrade and the sight and range. That's kind of an or for the
Mm-hmm.
infantry section. So yeah, the Grenadier was a little bit different in that it could get the HE, basically representing a grenade launcher, uh, grenade rifle launcher, and then the sight and range, which kind of makes thematic sense. So it kind of made sense together, but it just didn't really feel different a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time, and it didn't really stand out. And then more importantly, you can kind of see from first edition. Again, we kind of already touched on the MGs, but MGs standardized got that upgrade for free now. So now MGs have 3 sight and range. So it just kind of then at that point just became far too similar. It was similar, especially in first edition, but now because it started with it was like you're kind of just upgrading the Grenadier to kind of do the same role in a lot of ways that the MG42 does.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of just, okay, how do we unpack this? And so there was a lot to now where we got to the camo was really trying to find an interesting unit for each faction. That was kind of again the second edition design philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
where we wanted to find the right unit that could get camouflage. And the Grenadier just fit the bill. I mean, obviously, just looking at the the portrait, I mean, it's got camouflage, right?
Right.
So yeah. I mean, it wasn't really a camouflage, like too much of a camouflage unit in the video game, but I mean, it just thematically fits that role in that it doesn't because of HE's randomness.
Yeah.
It just kind of fits and counterbalances the two, where it kind of gives it not only unique playstyle but also balances it, because if you get camouflage at the right time, you use it the right way, it can have a major impact. So it just kind of gets the unit in a great spot, and
Yeah.
also keeps it different because this faction also has multiple regular infantry, as we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get to later. So this kind of helps differentiate it, which I'll touch on that part more later. But and that's kind of the core design of it. We wanted each core infantry to feel unique, and now this one's like, wow, this one's just it's just got that cool path that you can go down. I don't necessarily think, I know you mentioned it, you can get it early as the end of the second round, so going into the third round. I
Yeah.
don't think it's something necessarily to jump on, but you can
Yeah.
in the right circumstances. But yeah, I mean it's there, right? So it's obviously an option,
Yeah.
but
And it's
it's a little bit harder to use. But yeah, I mean it's not an automatic upgrade.
correct. It's a strong option, and I do like the price of two because at the end of round one, you're gonna get one XP. So then in round two, maybe you'll have one battle, so that's a total of 3 XP. And really, this is a good option because this is like, hey, it's a huge investment. 2 experience points in the first 5 rounds into something that's not a commander, that's not a Lost Brigades. And it's like, but it's great. It's great. It's like, you know what? This unit's in a pinch. He's got an MG unit next to him. I'm gonna put 2 XP in this unit and kind of keep him covered. And I think we've seen that in one of the games you could watch, where on the right side there was an MG unit, a Grenadier. MG unit was there, and the player bought the camo, automatically allowed him to keep pursuing that side of the board. I do like that 2 cost. It's really nice. Seeing it, not all Grenadiers get this upgrade because of the expensive cost, but the ones that are in a tight pinch, I do see it being used there.
Right.
And the 2 range, what's really strange is it's the HE really kind of helps nullify the strength of a camo unit in round 3 because you just don't know. You know what I mean? It's doing 1 damage, it's only got 2 range, and somebody could push it. Really nice setup. Man, really, really like that because in the first edition, the +1 sight, +1 range, it was a no-brainer. You'd always get that. It was just like yeah, I mean, it was always a no-brainer upgrade. Here, you really have to contemplate that decision. I like it, Brian. I'm a big fan of that. Man, you see it
Glad
in games being
glad to
used.
hear that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool, and it really helps their kind of core identity and get it in a pretty cool spot, because that's kind of the focus as we kind of go through Wehrmacht. That's kind of their focus, is their infantry are very basically versatile, and then they kind of have the answer to a lot of problems with their infantry, but then their core infantry doesn't really have very many speed die upgrades,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not too mobile. Their mortar team does, but other than that, they kind of, as we're going to get to it, they kind of rely on their vehicles more for mobility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And what's really
we'll
nice,
see that.
even if you might have the camo, but this unit is not the best at all at taking down light vehicles or taking down or even being in front of heavy tanks. So you notice the Americans had the bazooka upgrades, and that's tier 1. The British, same thing. You could have gone anti-infantry, anti-armor piercing. Here you kind of like this type of unit is really just really I would say harass and engage in just tactical decisions. I don't think, and that's exactly what it's designed for. Tier 1, just used to capture points and kind of harass around. I like that design a lot. MG in the first edition were always, if it's overview here, MG in the first edition, if you're playing the first edition and you have an MG on the board, you were always almost had to spend the experience to get to sight and range because of with the arc ruling and only 2 sight, 2 range, the MGs weren't effective. But if you got the 3 sight, 3 range, the MGs were super effective. Like the difference of covering was tremendous. And the second edition, you guys just went straight with, hey, they have 3 sight, 3 range now. Cleared up a lot of the rules about not being able to deploy while transported here. The first edition didn't have, which I do like. But another thing which is interesting about the MG was the one reason why I really like this is added because the second edition, if you guys actually look at the pinning arc, they actually changed it. So be aware of that. In the first edition, this was super strong. It was really hard to flank an MG. In the second edition, the pinning arc changed to now being like if there's an MG unit, and I'll bring one out right here. That's set up. In the first edition, the pinning arc used to be like this, and now in the second edition, you just go up 1 hex, and now the pinning arc's like this. So if it only has 2 sight, 2 range, is only doing this, and then you get the third upgrade, it allows you to cover that area there. So, which is a great change. Now, one thing you did add here was you did allow the Germans MG to have like an extremely strong approach. You got rid of the sight and range because now it's standard on the second edition, but instead you added now one extra infantry damage, AI damage. And also on the right side, you removed the defense dice and added armor piercing. So this thing is an MG that can pretty much pull down 3 anti-infantry damage,
Yep.
which is you wipe out any support squad pretty much in the game with the MG. And that's not including the 1 oversight damage they'll take. You know what I mean? So, or
Yep.
make it a tank hunt, like a light vehicle hunter with that armor piercing. This is crazy.
Yeah, in first edition, the armor piercing was kind of a no-brainer upgrade because pinning in first edition was enough versus any infantry, right? So like anything
Exactly.
in your arc. So there was kind of not really, even though you see the ore there, it wasn't really an ore. So we really tried to have it simulate as if it was good against good against light vehicles, but it was just too overwhelming in that department that it wasn't really a choice. So that just didn't really fit with what we wanted that unit's role to be, because that was like arguably a better upgrade than some other AP
Mm-hmm.
units later on, especially with that 3 range as well. If you put it in a building,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of a little bit nasty. So now we kind of doubled down in this MG's role basically, and the goal with this Wehrmacht MG was really the MG42 was really again kind of the AI focus. So this might actually be the hardest MG to use in the game properly, because you kind of run into that same problem in first edition, right? Like if like why would I send an infantry unit near your MG? It's just going to pin me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's basically a lot of depth here, even though it's a beginner faction. It's a very scary unit in that it can actually threaten infantry and buildings, right? So if you get up to the 3 AI,
Mm-hmm.
buildings give 3 defense. So all of a sudden, if you add any additional damage or if they miss any of their defense dice, they're losing models. They could be
Correct.
wiped. So it kind of gets to that point where it's scary, even attacking into buildings, which is really cool for this unit. So you don't really need to have other things to help support it per
Mm-hmm.
se when it attacks into buildings. And then the defense die is kind of a cool little option as well, where you kind of can, if you're holed up in a building yourself, you can get that extra defense die, or if you're behind a cover on the map, it kind of negates just one unit coming in and just basically trying to wipe you out. They really have to focus you. So this is very versatile MG in a lot of ways. It doesn't have a speed die, which all the other ones do,
Mm-hmm.
out of the core, right? So US and British do. Soviets have a commander one that doesn't, but this one's really just focused on. It sounds strange, but the optimal way to play it in a lot of ways, and this may sound weird to player or basically people who are experienced with the game or learning the game, is the kind of optimal way to play this MG. If you get those upgrades, is to actually just leave it not set up in the middle of the map, because then any infantry are scared
Correct.
tremendously to go anywhere near you because you haven't set up yet. So they don't know it's only going to cost you 1 cube to set up wherever they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and still have 3 cubes to spend. So you can still move 2 hexes and set up. So you can like get into a building and set up. So it's just to be able to just sit on that, even if you don't set it up in a round. It's so scary, and it can just threaten so much of the board because if you're in the center of the board and then able to move 2,
Yeah.
and the 3 range in sight with the pin, you could just prevent so much enemy movement, and you're not even set up. So yeah, I mean, when you're learning learning an MG, yeah, you usually try to look out for those buildings that you could set up in, and
Yeah.
that's one way to play them for sure when you're learning the game. But as you get better with the game, this guy is kind of
It's a
he's
squad
got
wiper.
a lot of hidden depth there if you
Yeah.
use him properly. So that's kind of the cool role where he's at now.
Yeah. And what's super interesting about this MG is great early on with the anti-infantry control, but one thing you do notice is it doesn't have any really light vehicle. You don't have like an HE, or you don't have like a flame upgrade for him here. It's straight anti-infantry. So early on in the game, if you focus too much on these and they start bringing out light vehicles, you could possibly go through with the AI, but you don't want to put all your hopes on this, especially towards the late game. It's great at holding points, but it's not really good at it doesn't have the vehicle control designed in it, but it does have the defense dice to allow you to absorb damage. Is this one of the only MGs with the defense dice in the second edition?
Yeah, out of the core.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, that's without any commanders or anything.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. So That's it, right? So there's other ones that can get more health, like the British can get more health and a speed die. But a health versus a defense die, they kind of serve two different roles, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Defense die is better like round over round against a single target, where health is better against a lot of targets because obviously round over round that health isn't going to gain you that much,
Hmm.
but the